Now, this has been a really long stretch of us being in the seller's market. Is
Sure.
this one of the longer stretches you've seen in your experience?
Yeah, only because I'm not that old. I think in general, all the markets in North America have had a really long period of rising prices and strong markets. Now that ended in the United States in sort of mid-2006. But when you look in Canada, depending on what market you were in, this started in the late 90s, or for us, 2001, 2002. And that's a long time for things to be going well.
It is, and we've seen things sort of change, it appears, really quickly. But did you see this coming?
I think everyone said that the market has to slow down. Everyone said that. I think it's changed faster than people were expecting, in that sales have really almost gone off a cliff.
In like a nosedive, you're saying, pretty much?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, they went off a cliff from a really, really high cliff, so they may be landing on a plateau. That's still a pretty good plateau, but there's been a very, very sharp decline, and it happened relatively quickly.
So do you think this shift, I guess this balancing out, do you think this will last as long as that seller's market did, or not so much?
It's really hard to say. It depends on how the market adjusts, and it depends on what happens to the economy. I always like avoiding forecasting.
But we like the forecasting.
I know you want me to forecast. So what I'm forecasting is that the things need to correct, but I don't know how that's going to happen. I mean, when you look at where prices need to adjust to, it looks like a, say, 10–15% decline in prices for an equilibrium in one way of measuring it. But you go back to the 1990s, and we had prices that were flat for about 7 years.
And by flat, meaning sort of not up and down?
Just basically flat,
Okay.
and that's a way of correcting too. So there are lots of different ways for housing markets to get back into balance.
How long does a typical real estate cycle last? We just talked about the seller's market seeming to be longer than usual. What is the typical cycle? Or is there a typical cycle?
You look across cities and it's really hard to say, and there's differences in sort of the cycle of starts, which tends to be much more extreme than, say, the cycle in prices. You get much more changes in starts with the economy. But it's there's an economist recently who made the comment that the business cycle is real estate.
Okay.
And that sort of the housing market cycle really drives many aspects of the business cycle. So if you think about the sort of the economy going up and down and sort of 5-year ups and 5-year downs or whatever, then maybe that's the right measure, but I don't really know.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the consequences of a balanced market. The first one, I think, is finally people can maybe afford. But not necessarily in Vancouver. Balancing out doesn't necessarily mean affordability, does it?
What balancing out means in this market is, as opposed to being disgustingly unaffordable, it's only horrendously unaffordable.
Right.
Right. Vancouver has been an expensive market for years, and that's not going to change. What balancing out means is that the environment for purchasing is more sane, that prices will adjust downward or be stable for a while, and that if you're selling a home, it's not going to sell the first weekend with multiple offers and people having some kind of bidding war. That if it takes 60 days to sell a house, that's normal.
Right. Yeah, that is actually more typical. But we're still seeing so many new developments.
Yeah.
There is going to be, I'm sure, a lot on the market, which could that then turn it really into a buyer's market?
Well, I think that the piece that is frightening is what happens with all these condos. We have a lot of them that are purchased by investors. Now, if they decided, if the market slows down and they decide to hold, that's one thing. But what happens if they decide to sell? And you get acceleration of a selling motive, or people who've bought on assignment who walk away.
Right.
If someone put 5% down and the price has declined to 10%, right, why are they going to then fulfill their contract?
Unless they're buying for a place to live and they really love the development.
That's different. I mean, and I think that's the issue here, is the difference between owner-occupiers, which is how we've always traditionally modeled and estimated and thought about housing, and a market like Vancouver, where in a lot of condos you have a lot of investors, and how that plays out. Now, if they want to hold it and they have cash flow for renting, that's great, but the rents aren't going to cover the mortgage.
Right.
Not in this market.